All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the work session for May 25th for the Sierra Vista City Council to order. And I apologize for starting a few minutes late. We had some technical issues with the equipment for recording, and hopefully that's been resolved. We'll move to the council agenda for 27 May. And give me a second here. We'll start out as we normally do with the call to order, roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Benning. Item number 1 is the acceptance of the agenda. Does anybody have any problems with the agenda as stated?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Then we go on to the city manager's report. Mr. Petichka, you have anything today you want to share with us?
Well, Mayor Mueller, I'll have a few items for Thursday. Obviously, the rebid for the Fry North Garden project that I discussed at your last meeting, and then a couple airport projects, financing, and street maintenance type things. So there'll be a few projects.
Okay. Then we move on to item number 2, which is the consent agenda. 2.1 is the special city council meeting minutes of May 11th. Any additions, deletions, corrections that we need to make today on that item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing none, the item 2.2 is the approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for May 13. Any corrections for that one? Okay. And the last item is a resolution of electrical utility easement for Veterans Park, Sports Complex, Sports Division building. And anybody want to talk to us about that? Let us know exactly what that is.
I can talk
Okay.
to it. Yeah, now that the city owns the sports building, it was acquired as part of the Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex expansion. We're metering that building separately from the rest of the Rothery Center, which is where this is coming from.
Okay, are we going to have a capability of metering the gym separately too?
I'm unsure, on the gym.
It would be under our account.
Okay.
Well, again, I don't know if you manage buildings individually or as the engineer, or whether you manage all the ones on site collectively.
Yeah, I'd have to check with staff on
Okay.
the gym. I was told this one was specifically for the sports building.
So if we have to do the gym separately at some point in time, we need to find that out. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the city engineer? I demoted you. Director of Public Works. Sorry. Okay.
He's that too.
Yeah, I know, she could do everything.
Send that to you.
Under new business, we got item 3, which is the final on the community development block grant. Matt, do you want to address us on that one?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, so this is the last procedural step in the process for approving the annual action plan for the upcoming program year. We'll be seeking your authorization on Thursday to submit the plan to HUD. It was put out for a 30-day public comment period that ended yesterday. We received 2 comments in favor of the funding for St. Vincent de Paul parking accessibility improvements. There was 1 comment that questioned the use of CDBG funds for building a parking lot at Sears Center Park and the benefits it would provide to the neighborhood. I would just say that we're simply implementing phase 2 of the master plan that was developed specifically for that property in consultation with neighborhood residents. The parking lot is one component of a series of improvements that will be made to the property over time to expand the park, which is located in a low-income census tract. The city did receive some good news earlier this month that our allocation will be increased by $3,753, or 1.5% above our original allocation. And staff is recommending that the increased amount be applied to the public facility budget for Sears Center. All the other proposed expenditures remain the same as previously presented. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Questions for Mr. McLaughlin? End of a long process. So thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for all your work and your department members' work on
My
this.
pleasure.
Okay, item number 4 is approval of the strategic plan. Mrs. Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item will adopt your fiscal year 22, your fiscal year 23 strategic plan framework. So that would go into effect on July 1st, 2021 and run through June 30th of 2023. This would be your 7th strategic plan adopted, and this current one has 4 priority areas with 18 goals and 58 accompanying actions. So it's quite an ambitious plan. So if you adopt it, it'll go into effect on July 1st. I would then assign leaders to each goal, and then I would share the implementation plan with you later this summer, and then you'd receive reports every 6 months. There's no changes from what you saw at the last work session, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions from Mrs. Yarborough? Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment, and I guess a general question for council is on page 5 of the strategic plan under quality of life. 10D and goal 12 seem to be redundant. And I'm sorry to bring it up last time. I've been reading it over and over and over, trying to see if I'm missing something, but I haven't come up with that answer. And I understand one's talking about sports tourism and one's talking about the plan, but they both discuss the parks master plan. And they seem to be
Give me the reference again.
10D
Under which one?
under quality of life on page 5 of 7.
I agree.
So 10D and number 12.
I agree.
So my recommendation would be to take out 10D and leave 12 because it's a more measurable goal.
Yeah. I think 12 was, no?
12 was the actual thing we came up with in strategic plan, yeah.
Yeah, they're almost word for word, too.
Well, isn't implementation versus funding different?
And
But a master
That's
plan's got
a
a,
question that I've been trying to reconcile.
I read it as two separate, the way it's written. Because increasing, one deals specifically with sports tourism, and obviously that has a facilities component. And then the other one deals specifically with funding, as Councilman Johnson says, the master parks plan, the master plan for 10-year, over a 10-year period. So I see them as two separate goals myself.
I'm not married to the idea of changing it. I just keep looking at it, and every time I read it, it seems the same to me, so.
And I'm sure you probably could do that with a couple others as
Yeah.
well. But again,
I do believe it's somewhat redundant, but I think there's a difference between implementing a plan and funding a
funding
plan.
plan. No,
So
I agree, it's two separate actions.
And again, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna throw myself on the sword on this. I just wanted to ask council
Please don't.
their thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Patuchik, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, you can't implement without funding.
That is true.
Which locations?
And I think because one is more an objective and one's a goal, so, okay,
I agree.
that's fine.
Okay. We're ready to go to a vote then next
I think so.
on Thursday. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Yarborough, for all your hard work, and thank you, staff, for putting up with the council as we went through a number of discussions on all these points over a couple of weeks. I know it can be grating sometimes, but we're just trying to get it right and getting something that's workable. So we appreciate your help.
Sausage being made.
Yeah, sausage being made. Okay. That was item 4. Item 5 is ratifying a sale of city property, and it's going to be Tony or Mr. Patucci?
Mr. Boone will
Okay.
give the presentation.
Me.
That's your area code.
Well, that is the
Area code.
calling into the buyer.
Okay.
Hello?
I like this letter.
There's not.
For the. You're saying.
Very loud.
Loud.
Alistair speaking.
Alistair, it's Tony Boone, how are you?
I may have lost you for a sec. Hey, how are you?
Good. Hey, I'm just at the city council meeting, so I'll start
That little meeting.
and we'll jump in kind of as we go along. So I just want to make sure you could hear.
Sure can, yep.
All right, so Mr. Mayor and Council, this resolution ratifies the sale of 3514 Kings Court Drive, parcel number 107-51-289 Echo. If approved, the staff will then have the authority to complete the sale of the city property, commonly referred to by the previous business name of Kings Court. The memo in your packet covers a long-term history dating back to 2012 at the point of donation of the property, and later in 2014 where the voters approved the sale of the property. More recently, the economic development team has been working to sell the property and reactivate the location really over the last 2.5 years. And part of that element is working, of course, with our listing agent, Frank Morrow of First West Properties, who is here also to answer any questions. We've shown the property to multiple buyers, and of course, there was one key missing element, and that is clearly present with the company offering to buy the old tennis court and associated property. On the phone is Alistair Miller of 2536061 Ontario, Inc., doing business as the Supreme Court in Toronto, Canada. Alistair has been the owner and director since 2014 and knows how to successfully run a tennis operation. We've been coordinating with Alistair since March, and we met on site on 29 April with both Alistair and Frank. And on May 17th, we received the current offer with a sale price of $500,000. As a brief introduction to Alistair, and I believe we've sent his letter to you, so hopefully you had a chance to look at that. But I pulled a few key points off the bio, and then I'll turn it over to Alistair. In addition to being the director of the Supreme Court and owner since 2014, Alistair helps oversee day-to-day operations of the club and leads the Supreme Court's performance junior programming. Alistair is one of only 25 Tennis Canada Club Professional 3 coaches in the country. He's also certified as a tennis professional by United States Professional Tennis Registry, along with certifications for wheelchair tennis and cardio tennis. From a performance coaching standpoint, Alistair has helped produce U12 provincial champions, U16, U18, as well as U18 national champions. Alistair has helped athletes reach the top 100 on the international junior side, and has been thrilled to help players achieve junior player ranking in the top 10 in the world. In 2019, Alistair was presented with the Tennis Canada's Coaching Excellence Award for his contribution to training and the results of the Canadian National Championships. With that, I'll ask Alistair if you've got any kind of general comments for the mayor and council.
At this time, not so much. Just a quick note on our end to say how excited we are about the potential of being in Sierra Vista. And as I had said in that note, I mean, pretty quickly fell in love with the city, the openness of the people, and it's just so far been a pleasure working with Frank and the city, just working together to try to get close to a deal here. So I am more than willing and happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. But from our end, we're super excited, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Alistair, thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, do you have any questions?
Questions from the council? I just, Mr. Miller, on behalf of the council, I want to thank you for your offer. As you're aware, the council has to vote on this so that we can legally get the purchase documents all done. We hope to do that on Thursday, and we're looking forward to you working with you and bringing a tennis back to a more prominent event here in the city of Sierra Vista, like it was before. So we appreciate your cooperation.
Well, thank you, sir, and likewise.
Anything else for Tony? Nothing. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Alistair, thanks, and I will
Thank
be,
you, everybody.
I will be in touch.
Sounds good. Looking forward to meeting everybody. Cheers.
Right.
Okay, then for the rest of the council meeting on Thursday, we've got call to public comments and request of council, and of course, adjournment. Next item on today's agenda is the budget briefing, FY '22 budget update. Mrs. Yarborough.
Mr. Mayor, we wouldn't normally have had a budget update at this council meeting, but it's an unusual year and there have been some changes since our last budget update. So we're going to briefly go through some of those so they're not a surprise when you see the budget book at the end of this week. And we're also in the process of setting up your one-on-one budget meetings too, and then your budget work sessions June 14th through 16th. So the first significant change, we had some very happy news, well, happy news for us, not a happy circumstance. Tuesday morning, we found that Mrs. Sue Hirschheimer left $1.2 million to the Animal Control Center in her estate, and that money has already been conveyed to the city. So what that did was accelerate the construction of the expansion for the Animal Control Center. So it's been shared with council a number of times that we've been working on designing an expansion for the animal shelter for a number of reasons. First, for the city's own needs and the increased number of animals for a number of reasons. Wichita City and having the agreement with Wichita City to take their animals. We have an agreement with Fort Huachuca, and as the city has grown and more animals have been coming to the shelters. So this expansion would be only for the city's needs for an expanded facility. We don't know what the county is doing or if that would ever develop. From recent news, it looks like they may be headed in a different direction. So what we have done is added $800,000 to the capital improvement fund to design and construct in the next fiscal year in conjunction with the $1.2 million donation. Next, we've had some changes to the EMS substation estimates. So we're waiting on the final price, which we expect to come around August. In the meantime, though, it's been no secret that construction prices have increased anywhere from 30 to 40% over the past year. So the current estimate is exceeding what we had budgeted and what we had received through the DSIP grant. So we'll be budgeting some additional money, expecting that price to come in above what we have received through the grant.
Ms. Yarborough, what are you estimating the increase in costs will be by the time we break ground?
Right now, the tentative estimate, Mr. Johnson, is about $600,000 over what the grant, what we were granted.
Okay.
So, but we have until August, but we need to budget something, so we have space
Okay.
once we get that final price.
Okay. Thank you.
The other question that I didn't think of the other day when we talked, I apologize for that, is obviously construction, as you said with the EMS, the cost is going up. Would that affect previous item, the animal control improvement?
Could, Mr. Mayor, but the expansion still needs to be designed. We have a master plan at this point, so it will take some time to design it, and we'll see how construction prices go in the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't we have we were talking about $200,000 set aside for the design?
Yes.
In
Yes,
the
Mr.
previous
Johnson.
meeting?
Yeah.
So there's also $360,000 set aside for the design, which is already in donation funds. That is on top of the 1.2 million donation and the 800,000 budgeted.
Okay, cool. All right.
The
Thank you.
key there, Mr. Mayor, is that, we have the ability to adjust, the plans in the event that the costs come in higher than what we're anticipating right now.
Well, here's my concern, is they're gonna be higher. The question really is how much higher, and we'll wait in 9 months, 12 months to next year. Will that lower it? I doubt it. But again, we just need to be aware that contingency for increased cost it could affect the animal control as well.
Mr. Mayor, we're also considering a procurement method that Kenny shared with us last week that would allow us to bring in an architect and a contractor to design in conjunction with the contractor, slightly different than a design build,
Okay.
but to ensure that we can stay within the budget.
All right, it's good to hear Kenny's earning her pay. Thanks, Kenny.
Kenny's doing great.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Are we in talks, or have we been talking to the county about the joint venture? Or are we, for now, just going on our own, hoping they want to join us?
We haven't had a conversation recently. I've read in the paper, as many of you had, that they are considering another option. I have had that conversation with county staff that they are considering that as an option. The way the master plan was developed was there were different priorities and different options. So one of the master planned options was a regional shelter. So if that should ever become something that we want to pursue or the county wants to pursue in partnership, we have the ability to add on to the design. And the way the expansion was designed, it can easily be expanded to accommodate a regional shelter,
Okay, thank you.
but doesn't need to be.
Thank you.
And given the way that our revenue has been coming in, as we shared the March sales tax revenue numbers with you, we felt that it was reasonable to increase our projected revenue increase for next year from 4% to 6%. Still probably relatively conservative, and that would bring in $308,000 to the general fund and $83,000 to the capital improvement fund. So we have adjusted our numbers to reflect a 6% increase in projected revenue for next year.
Nice.
Given some of the changes that we saw, making the allowance for accelerating the Animal Control Center expansion, and then knowing that the EMS substation is probably going to cost a little more, we reduced the number of new restrooms for the Civic Center Sports Complex that had been talked about in previous budget work sessions. So instead of building 2 new restrooms in the Civic Center Sports Complex, we're looking at building 2. And so we reduced that budget $300,000 to $500,000. So then, I mentioned last work session about the American Rescue Plan Act and the funds coming to Sierra Vista through that act. So brief history, this act was passed by Congress in February of 2021. It established the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, which meant $350 billion to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. And these funds are meant to meet pandemic response needs. So the guidance came on May 10th on what these funds could be used for. So I included 4 here. I must have been interrupted as I was making this slide because there's a couple more and I'll go through those with you. But the first 4, and these are taken right from the guidance, these are not my words. First is to support public health expenditures, including specifically payroll and covered benefits expenses for public safety employees, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, serving the hardest hit communities and families, replacing lost public sector revenue. And then the ones I accidentally left off were providing premium pay for essential workers, investing in water and sewer infrastructure, and investing in broadband infrastructure. So, staff's recommendation, Sierra Vista will be getting just over $6.2 million. And the way this is broken into half and spread over the next 2 years. So we'll be getting just over $3.1 million next year. So our recommended use of this money is first to take a page out of the state's playbook and use it to pay Sierra Vista Fire and Medical Services salaries and benefits up to just over $1.9 million for next year. Their total salaries and benefits are just over $7.5 million, so a good intended use for that money due to their pandemic response.
Will part of this benefits be part of the PRS that we're gonna.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, so we're gonna be able to bump up our contribution
No.
by using some of this money?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, it's a good question. The monies can be used for current year expenses for what we need to pay PSPRS for this year, but we can't use it for the accumulated funds that are already in place.
But that's what the federal government, that's a requirement for the federal government, obviously. But the one thing, I think the thing that we've shown that works is rather than paying it quarterly, rather than paying the PSPRS quarterly and ARS quarterly, we pay it all at once. And since we've been doing that for, is it 3 years now? We're in our third year. What's happening is the numbers are getting better because we're getting the additional interest for those extra quarters that we're paying, and we're paying the full amount of what we have on our, how do we say this?
The formula, I guess.
We pay for every, for example, police department, we may have 66 people on the books, but we don't have 66 positions filled, but we still pay for those empty positions. And by doing that, we're slowly closing that gap.
Well,
Without.
I'm just digging
too much
for, I'm just digging for gold here, Mayor.
Yeah, I
that's
know,
all.
I appreciate that, because I had the same question when I met with the city manager.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Johnson, this will help, in terms of us digging a deeper hole. So, it'll be helpful to get, some of this year's paid through the act. But the mayor is correct. We've changed some practices. We used to pay our bill at the end of the fiscal year because normally it would be less than the estimate that we would be given from PSPRS and ARS because of openings and those kind of things, retirements that occurred during the year. We now pay our full budgeted amount at the front end, so that automatically means we're paying extra towards PRS, and that has proven right so far to be helpful in terms of us reducing our liability. So we plan to continue to do that, and if we need to put more in later, say we have generate fund balance at the end of the year or something like that, that is a use that we can put those funds towards as well. So while it would be nice to be able to use this to pay our accumulated liability, we can only do this year's.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for the
Unfortunately, it's
explanation.
specifically called out under ineligible uses that you cannot use it to pay down an unfunded liability for a pension cost.
Thank you, Mr. Do we have anything earmarked, anything for the 6.2 million savings we're gonna have on M&O?
Can you repeat that,
If we
Mr.
pay
Penny?
1.9 per year to the salaries using the rescue plan, that's gonna save us 1.9 on O&M, right?
So
do we
that's
have
my
it?
next slide.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead,
yeah,
see?
you're jumping ahead of us here.
That's all right,
That means we're paying attention up here.
hey, that's our job.
So then the balance of that fund, or that money, our recommendation is, if you recall, we're having an artificial decrease in our income tax revenue for next year due to the filing deadline last year being extended to July 1st. So that was just over $1.1 million. We will see that money back the following year, but replacing that money out of this money allows us to not have to make an artificial $1.1 million reduction, which would have been quite painful. So our recommendation is to use the balance then to make up for that money that we won't get next year, but we will see back the following year. As far as the recommended use of that freed up $1.9 million that we would not be spending on the firefighter salaries and benefits, we have a number of one-time projects in the capital improvement fund. First, the additional $800,000 to add to the $1.2 million donation for animal control expansion, the $500,000 for the Civic Center Sports Complex restrooms, the 2 playground replacements at Veterans Park and behind the Oscar Roon Community Center, the library computer system replacement, replacing the AV systems in Fire Station 3 conference room and the large training room, replacing the police department flooring, and then the roof replacements for the pavilion, Fire Stations 1 and 2. That's the end of the updates for now, again, your tentative budget book is on track, and Jen's working hard to get that out to you by Friday, June 7th through the 9th. You'll be hearing from Rochella here today or tomorrow to schedule your one-on-one meetings, should you want them. Your special budget work sessions are June 14th through the 16th. Your tentative budget vote is scheduled for June 24th, followed by your final budget vote and property tax hearing July 22nd, and then you'll wrap up August 12th with your property tax vote. Happy to answer any additional
Any
questions.
further questions or comments on this?
With respect to the governor's flat tax proposal, I know our Mayor Pro Tem wrote an op-ed in the
Paper for tomorrow.
paper, and it's interesting because I've been asked about that, and I said, what's good for the people may not necessarily be good for the people. And I have no other way of explaining it, because we're going to obviously have to make up that shortfall on the shared revenues from,
Should it pass?
should it pass.
And that's the one thing we've been working on with the League of Cities as a member of their executive board. I'll share with everybody, if you're not already aware of it, is we've been working very diligently to make sure that at least the state understands the impact that they're going to have on small cities and towns particularly, because there's no way we're going to be able to make up that money. This time we're very lucky to get some federal funds, but for long-term,
Long-term, it's
we're
not going to be
not
there.
going to be able to make that without significantly raising local taxes. And local taxes, as everybody will hear from the constituents, are already too high. So,
Mr. Mayor, Victoria has an estimate of what the impacts of that will be, and another challenge with regards to the legislature's
I got to
delivery.
say, this is comments, because this is not an item for discussion on the agenda, so
Well,
we
it does
got to be
affect,
careful.
it does affect the budget
Budget,
and future
yeah.
budgets, though. So, go ahead and give the numbers. But the procedural item in the legislature right now is that it did not appear that there would be the votes to carry the income tax cut as a separate item. It has now found its way into the budget as a budget proposal, which means that a vote against, it would require a vote against the entire budget in order to change that. So it's a different proposition with regards to how they're voting.
So it's a phased cut over 3 years, and the first year we'd see an effect would be fiscal year '24, and it would mean a $705,000 cut that year. The following year would be a $1.4 million cut, and then the third year would be a $2.1 million cut, which would then carry through every year thereafter. So pretty substantial.
Yeah, and this really hurts, as the mayor mentioned, the smaller cities and the rural communities far more than the valley cities. So it's, but as Mr. Johnson says, it kind of pits you against the folks you work for. They get a tax cut, but then we have to grapple with how to provide the services. So
Get a tax cut and we'll re-tax them. That's the only thing you can do.
All right, so we'll watch the state budget, that's the bottom line,
And write your legislation.
And right.
and write letters. Okay, so that ends the item B, the 2020 budget update. Now we get to move to the Parks Master Plan.
Yep.
Who's going to start?
I'll start.
Matt's going to start. I know we got a tag team going on for this one.
yeah.
Before I get started, I just want to thank everybody for those. I read through this. I saw the slides. I've gotten through preliminarily all the information that was provided to us, although I've still got some questions that I'll talk to the Parks Director about. But I want to thank particularly the good folks on the Parks and Rec Commission, who we have members here, former member, et cetera. And I know it's a lot of work to go through this, and it was a lot of effort, so we appreciate the time and effort, the thought, and the patience that went into working with the staff to come up with a workable plan. I think we still got to do some fine adjustments, and I'll share that with our director of Library and Leisure Services, but I think it looks pretty good. So, Matt?
Okay. So we're very pleased to present our first cut of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which has been a year in the making. It was a group effort, so this will be a group presentation. We understand there's a lot of information to consider, and we'll do our best to break it down for you. But I just want to emphasize that what we're looking for today is preliminary guidance and direction. And as you see on the cover slide, we have a draft stamp, and we fully understand that this is a working document. And the bulk of our time today will be spent presenting the capital projects that are in the plan and how they relate to our strategic objectives. We are going to go over the key findings of the background studies and the public engagement that led to our project recommendations and priorities. Also important to note is that there are plans within the plan that were developed on a parallel track that are new and cover Veterans Memorial Park and Civic Center complex that provide context to the capital projects that tie it all together. And Laura has modeled a funding scenario that provides existing and potential revenue sources that are related to project groupings to give you a mental framework for how this plan could be potentially funded over the years to help make these projects a reality. And so, let's see, it's a little different. Okay, so the City Council, through the Strategic Leadership Plan, tasked staff with developing a comprehensive parks master plan. I think you'll agree that we fulfilled that intent, and what you have before you is comprehensive. The Parks Master Plan is intended to serve as a guide for the maintenance and improvement of parks and park facilities, and for the planning period, which runs through 2032, and is broken down into 3 phases and 4-year increments. We believe the plan presents a true and accurate picture of what is most needed and desired by the community. It contains small and medium projects throughout the parks across the city, as well as more significant investments in the major parks that serve the community and beyond. The basic premise of the plan is to take care of and enhance what we have, address gaps in service, as well as improve the way recreational service is provided. The city's commitment to the park system is evident in the quality of the park and recreation facilities, and the investments that you made through the Snyder Electric project are already paying off, and Laura's going to be talking about the growth in sports tourism in Sierra Vista. And finally, the master plan incorporates the individual park plans that remain relevant to help us improve coordination and consistency going forward. We followed a traditional approach to developing the Parks Master Plan. Blake, who spent most of the time preparing the background studies and the public survey that went out, is going to share some insights from the data analysis that's included in the plan and also on a series of web maps that, again, provide context to the information. He visited each and every park to count the facilities and assess their condition at the ground level and by air using our drone. As I mentioned, he worked with the Public Affairs Office to develop and push out the survey through social media, which garnered a really good response rate, and we'll present those results to you. And with that, I'll turn over to Blake to just kind of take you through those key findings.
All right, Mayor Mueller, members of council. All right. The first part of the master planning process involved, as Matt said, inventorying and surveying our parks. This included examining the conditions of existing amenities, park infrastructure, compliance with code. While we were out in the field, we also took overhead photographs of each park using the city's drone, such as this one right over here. And following this, a needs assessment was created based on several criteria, including comparative standards from the National Recreation and Park Association, which includes park service data from about 100 jurisdictions of similar population, existing park level of service standards as set by the Vista 2030's general plan, park gap analysis using GIS, and the results of our public outreach initiative. The Vista 2030 established a citywide park acreage level of service target of 440 acres, which is about 10 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. We are currently at about 377 acres with the acquisition of the Rothery Center. Though future proposed park developments are slated to meet our development goal for that regard. And 89% of city residents are within walking distance of a park, which is about a half mile in terms of distance, though only 17% stated that their primary means of transportation to their local park was walking versus driving or biking. Comparatively, NRPA data shows that 75% of Americans live within walking distance of a park, and about half of them primarily walk. The city is currently doing pretty well in terms of park gap coverage, though facilitating walkability is an ongoing objective. Expanding the city's multi-use path networks and filling in sidewalk gaps is something staff is working on through our CDBG and most recently FTA grant proposals. And regarding public outreach responses, Veterans Memorial Park is the most popular park in the city, and that was cited for its central location, wide variety of features, and public events. And the public was also surveyed on what types of amenities they wanted to see more of throughout the city. Splash pads, playgrounds, and walking paths were the winners, all of which are proposed improvements within the master plan itself, and we'll cover some examples of those later. We also asked the public to share what they considered to be their perfect day in the park, and we compiled a word cloud of relevant key terms mentioned in the responses. The most common responses generally involve children and play spaces for them, with lush grass, sunny days, and cool places to rest in the shade. Following this, we asked for more general input regarding ideas for the future of services parks. Dogs and canine-related concerns were the most common here, with requests for new dog parks or complaints about leashless dogs or the waste they leave behind. Following this were expressed desires for more children's play spaces, especially in the south end of town, sports fields, pickleball courts, walking paths, and water features such as splash pads. These responses, as well as the park gaps, future park prospects, amenity locations, proposed capital improvements, and more can be seen on the interactive web app that we created for the master plan. And this is available for staff and the public reference. And this should be, this is an example of what it looks like here, and we provide a link within the master plan itself. Back to Matt.
Okay, so the capital improvements program covers maintenance and replacement, upgrades to existing facilities, and then new park development. This slide shows the proposed expenditures by category, and you can see that park infrastructure makes up 41% of the proposed expenditures within existing parks, and the biggest line items there are adding public parking, replacing portables with permanent restroom buildings, replacing irrigation systems that are beyond their useful life. And Laura will be talking a little later about how they're shifting from to a more proactive posture with respect to park maintenance. Recreation facilities constitute 28% of the total, which includes a proposed outdoor expansion to the aquatic center, as well as replacing the gym at the sports complex. And she will also be sharing with you some of the strong demand for gym use, open basketball, volleyball, and other sports that are underpinning our recommendation to double its size. Sports-related athletic facilities include ball fields, sports courts, and the running track. They make up 1/5 of the total and are central to our ability to attract major tournaments. Civic Center and Veterans Memorial are the focal point for those proposed investments. Maintaining and upgrading the leisure space accounts for 9% of the proposed expenditures, and that includes playgrounds, play features, shade structures, tot, turf, ramadas, and those items that are traditionally associated with parks. rehabbing and extending multi-use paths and sidewalks within our community parks and adding splash pads, which Blake mentioned are the most popular features that came through in the community surveys, are proposed under that line item. And then upgrading the new pump track and modifying the runway and adding launch pads at Bowen Airfield are under the specialty recreation category, which constitutes, as you would expect, about 1% of the CIP for existing parks. And then when you look at the proposed capital projects by park location, as you would expect, most of the expenditures are proposed for the major parks, Veteran Memorial, and Civic Center, followed by Len Roberts. 80% of the CIP is allocated towards Veterans and Civic Center, which will be covered in our presentation of the overall master plan for those properties. And so I think that would be a good segue just to go through those elements, just to see the benefits and features and how they relate to the overall vision. And Laura Kilberg is actually going to take it from here. And with that, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm going to go over the conceptual maps for the Veterans Memorial Park and Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex vision and the Civic Center. So we'll start with the proposed Veterans Memorial Master Plan. This is one of 3 plans that was put out to the public, and this was the plan that got the most number of responses as the way to go, which is why it was included in our plan. And we'll start on the veterans side. As you can see, there's more grass, which is providing more green space for us to use for events, for community enjoyment, and that is a change which leads into the parking. Not exciting, but if you've ever attended an event at Veterans Memorial Park, you know that it is a required feature that we sorely need. So we're looking at adding more parking down in the southwest corner, and then adding a one-way road that would go around our new grass area, and an additional row down to the southeast corner, and that would provide more parking to a space that's already used for events and provide us a better infrastructure for what we're already using the space for. Then we have the pretty pink squares. There's one down in the south, and then 2 up in the north by the skate park. Those are ramadas, and that would allow more areas for people to gather. They could be rented, and it would involve more features for the community that we think would be beneficial. The other feature that we're very excited about, and it was number 1 that came back with the public response, was splash pads. Those are the little blue circles. There's one up in the north corner by the skate park, and then one down in the south east corner by the playground. And there's another splash pad over by the Cove. I'll talk about that one in a minute as part of the Cove expansion. But we're very excited about the splash pads. We have 1 splash pad in our inventory right now at Len Roberts Park, and that is very heavily used. And again, as I said, one of the number 1 amenity requests by the community for our park inventory. The yellow on the south is a playground. Now that Ms. Yarborough talked about that as one of the things that we're budgeting for to replace this year. So that's on the plan, but we want to replace that as soon as possible. That's currently known as the AKA Castle Playground. And that's just because that needs to be done sooner rather than later. The blue areas to the far left of the veterans portion of the map indicate facility expansions. So the Cove area is really exciting. That is an expansion of the patio area. And what we are proposing, and again, this is all conceptual. This would all go through the public process for each component, is adding a splash pad there, a wading pool, a couple water cannons, a couple of the mushrooms or umbrellas, depending on what part of the country you come from. People call them different things. a wading pool, and some permanent cabanas to make that an outdoor space that the community can enjoy as well as the indoor space that we have. Just to the south of the cove is a lovely blue rectangle, which is much needed storage. That would be a large storage building that would help us store with infrastructure that we have within the department for the various events and other programs that we do. The more that we gain in resources to help us not have to rent and save money in the long run, there comes with that the other side of that, which is storage for those assets. Below that is the square with the long skinny rectangle. That is the park's maintenance yard proposed location. The current park's maintenance yard is up in the northern corner where the splash pad is. That current parks building has become too small and very aged, and it is not providing the proper structure that we need to take care of the infrastructure, the equipment that is needed. And when we get to the other side of the map, where we talk about the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex part, we're going to need even more infrastructure to maintain that area. So that would be the park's maintenance yard, and then that long skinny area is a covered parking area to put things like the mowers and the aerators and things under so they're protected from the elements. If anybody's ever had anything outside in their backyard in the sun, it's one of our greatest and sometimes most destructive assets in this area. So that kind of, and I forgot Mr. Ramada down here on the front side of the park. And that's just another area for the community to enjoy. Again, there's the future talk of the Veterans Expanded Memorial Area. Again, thinking with this being a retirement community, what a great space that would be to have a Ramada right there encompassing that veterans area for people to do celebrations and other things like that. So if we move over to the right-hand side.
Before you move over,
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm glad to see that parking spaces have been addressed and the traffic circulation, because those are two of the minimum requirements that make sense to me. There's one minimum requirement that I don't see on this, and it's this thing I hear from moms and grandmas, especially the moms that have young kids, every time there's a large event, and that is there's only one facility to go change a diaper, take the kids to the bathroom, etc. And you haven't touched on that type of facility that's accessible to people that are there for an event in the park.
Well, again, this is a conceptual drawing. We do have restrooms on the other side.
But again, just like the complaint is, we only have one, and people have to take them all the way over to the one right now. We're going to have a bigger park, and now we're going to have to take them all the way over the other side. So I would ask that you at least go back and reconsider locations at least near the pavilion or within reasonable walking distance, so that the moms can take care of the younger, especially the younger kids that they have to tote or push or carry to those facilities. So to me, that's a gap right now. That's why I mentioned it. Everything else looks doable, and we can certainly talk about other reservations I have about other things. But to me, that's a glaring, we missed something, thing that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for the feedback. So to get to the other side of the park, another exciting feature is dead center in the middle is a roadway that would connect the two parcels, which right now we don't have. And that would allow the two sides to really come together as one entity. When we get over to the right-hand side of the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex, the vision there is kind of a deconstructed rec center, an almost campus-like concept, where we have many of the things that you would have in a larger East Coast interior rec center, but it's outdoors as well as indoors. So, for example, the track is outside. We propose that be taken from a dirt track to a rubber-coated track. That's part of the plan. The football field would be converted to turf, like Sear and the Domingo Paez soccer fields. We're proposing to reallocate or reorient Howard softball field. It's currently oriented in such a way that a good whack is going to send a ball right into MLK. So turning her the other way seems like a much more proactive choice. Doing a little refurbishing to the baseball field. Now, what I didn't address is when we put in the parking down in the southwest corner, that takes out our volleyball fields. But fear not, we have accounted for them up in the right-hand corner of the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex. Something with the fields that's also in the plan is to light all of those areas, which would allow for more community engagement throughout extended hours. It would also facilitate itself to tournaments and additional revenue in that way. The tennis courts are an existing amenity. They need a little love right now. They need some resurfacing. They are a questionable playing surface and are on the verge of becoming a safety issue at this point. We're proposing adding 2 basketball courts just to the right of the tennis courts, and that's one of the key features that we're still missing in that area, which would help to create that full campus rec center area. Just to the left of the tennis courts is a little yellow, a little pink, and a little blue colored shape. That would again be a playground, a ramada, and a splash pad. And that creates another area where you could have rentals, birthday parties. It also creates a nice play space for children who are perhaps not engaging in the activity that's happening on the football field, on the softball field, on the baseball field, etc. Which is some of the feedback that we get right now is, what do I do with my other kids while Johnny is having practice? So that's something that we want to address too. And again, the splash pad is a huge feature. We're also addressing parking, because you don't want to have all these amenities and nobody to park. So we've put in the spot below the volleyball courts, really flushed out the area that's now just kind of a big dirt patch next to the basketball courts, put some actual parking in front of the tennis courts. And then there's the gym, which is a very exciting project. What we're proposing is doubling the footprint size and creating a large gym area that could be partitioned off. It would allow for open gym time. It would allow for concerts, rentals, parties, even, partnership with the school for them to have a place to do prom. The possibilities are endless there. But to add a second story with offices, also activity rooms. But to add the second story with offices, that would allow some consolidation of the department. It would allow for extended business hours, more business days during the week without actually having to add more staff, and fulfilling needs of the community more when they want to play. Then there's what I want to end with on this one is the lovely orange-red, I'm not sure how it's reading for you, lines that kind of go all around through the park and in through the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex. Those are additional walking paths, which was second or third? Third most requested amenity by the public when we put that out to the public for response. It also allows for, it's a safe area to walk. It allows for like a 5K or a 10K to be run within the park without having to actually close the streets. And it provides a lot of just general opportunity for connectivity. We have sidewalks that kind of dead end right now. In the far right corner, you see it kind of dead ends to MLK. And when we punch through Avenida Escuela eventually to the Civic Center, which is the next riveting map. Stay with me.
We're with you.
That will create a nice walkway between the two areas, creating connectivity, which again would be great for tournaments. We could have both locations operating. So I would say it's roughly probably at least a couple miles worth of walking path that we would be implementing in that area. So before I go to the Civic Center, any more questions?
I do have another comment. It's really just a voice of concern. The road that splits the school property from our property,
Yes.
the way it's currently fenced by the gymnasium, neither helps or hurts security for the area for both the school or us. So that needs to be addressed. If it requires an additional agreement as to where to place a fence or whatever else to make sure we can secure things, that needs to be addressed in the process too as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Straight
for
comment.
that.
Straight comment.
Oh, okay.
You can talk to me later.
Oh, I forgot to mention the restrooms. There are restrooms. The red dots are restrooms on the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex side. There's two at a concession stand and one centrally located. But again, this is conceptual, and all of these pieces would go through the public process, which is where I think we would flush out any other gaps that we might have lost. This was developed by staff, and we did our best to kind of address things, but the public is where you find the loopholes.
Water. Like just to look at water. We don't have any.
The splash pads.
Those aren't to look at water, those are to play in.
Look at it.
I think right
We're not
dab
putting
smack in
fun, yeah.
Veterans Memorial Park, right in the middle, should have a little water feature.
You mean water features?
Yeah, like a water feature.
Like a fountain?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Benning, again, this is very conceptual, so when we go through the full public process, when everything is planned out, everybody will be able to put in their little votes for the little things that they want and those features. So this is a very conceptual plan right now, basically a layout, and the features will be all chosen later.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna make a comment about water.
I like water,
I
Mr. Mayor.
like lakes. You know, we're not named Fountain Hills, but I wouldn't mind a fountain in town. However, water is intricate to our success or failure. I won't say survival, but yes, that's true too.
I agree.
And we have to be very prudent as a public body to show that we're doing everything reasonably possible, again, reasonably possible, to make sure that we're conserving water. Having a fountain loses water. That's one of the reasons why we do not allow commercial businesses to have fountains in this town, okay?
I agree.
So why should we, as a city, do something that that we're requiring already of our citizens to do to save water? So,
Splash pads,
and the thing is, I'm, 4 splash pads I would say 4 too many, but I understand
I agree.
the need, maybe cutting it down to 2 in this area would be more than appropriate. I can understand dealing with young kids, since I do have a couple young nephews that like to go play in those kind of places.
And they're fine.
I should say grandnephews. But again, we need to be very prudent and careful when we talk about water features that basically evaporate, and we need to be able to have the data to say, if this thing's here's the schedule it operates on, and we expect that X percent will evaporate, and that's acceptable, or that's not acceptable. And so it's a very sensitive, critical issue for the future growth in Sierra Vista. So we need to make sure when we talk about water features, whether they're splash pads, whether they're fountains, whether they're a lake, or a fishing pond, or whatever else it is, a canoe, a rapids. I like to shoot the rapids in a canoe or a kayak, but I mean that's not going to happen here. Okay, so we need to be realistic. We need to be focused on the future of the community and our water issues. So
No,
I
agree.
just say that as a warning, and I think they've done a very prudent job of trying to balance between what the public wants and what's realistic. They may have gone a little one way or the other, but again, that's why it's just a plan.
Yes, sir. I agree.
I'll get off my water soapbox.
So should I lead off the Civic Center master plan with the one splash pad we're proposing?
Yeah, splash pads everywhere.
This map is much faster, I promise. There's not as much happening in this one. The Civic Center master plan was actually developed about 10 years ago.
You need to,
Oh, so sorry. Thank you, Matthew.
thank you.
Thanks, man.
Was actually developed about 10 years ago by some previous management and leadership, and it was shelved before it came to approval. So, but it's a good plan. So we've brought it back, dusted it off, brought her back out. I ended with walking paths, so I'll start with walking paths on this one. The red line is walking paths that would go throughout the fields. It would create connectivity. It would create another area for the community to walk. It would be useful for tournaments. And again, we're looking at approximately 2 miles or so of walking paths. Again, a lot of parking. That's a big issue for the fields. When you have multiple fields, you have multiple teams, then you have the overlap of games. Parking is a huge infrastructure issue. Arbenz Field is right there in the center. Right now, that is one large field. It's proposed that that be turned into a 4-plex baseball field. And then the other big thing is adding the Domingo Paez expansion to a 4-plex and beefing up the pump track, installing a trailhead, some bench seating, some lighting, irrigation, some obstacles, things like that. That one I went through super fast. Questions? All right.
It says, by the well site, it says future WWTF site. What's a WWTF? Wastewater treatment facility? Okay. So we're gonna treat before we send it down to the sewer system, or is that what's going on there?
That was the long-standing plan, you know.
Oh, that was the old
years ago.
plan.
Yeah. I doubt seriously that we'll be treating effluent there.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. To treat it properly, you need a lot more space, I would think, but,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think that's gonna work there.
All right.
So it would just go
It would have to eventually.
recharge down into the,
Have to eventually go to, figure a way to feed it down to the plant.
okay.
Yeah, and I don't see a lot of development occurring on that side of town to
For a while.
generate more effluent that needs to be treated along the way.
So we're talking for the bathrooms, then they're gonna be septics, pretty much?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
Okay.
For the short term, anyway. Okay.
These are all really good comments. Thank you. So, looking at new park development, the plan proposes 2 new community parks. One is in the medium or short to medium term, and that would be Roadrunner Park. We did some digging in the public records and found that that park was designated as a future park site back in 1993, so it's been on the books for a while. The city took title of 14 acres of property located northeast of Canyon de Flores and St. Andrews Drive, just south of the parking lot. And we've been the city manager's been in recent conversations with the school board about potentially acquiring the adjoining 15 acres to the south of that property. And the vision there is to essentially replicate Tompkins Park at this location. So transplanting what's at Tompkins Park to Roadrunner Park. And then the second park that's identified that's more long-term is the community park within the Tribute Development. And we've been working out an infrastructure matrix with Castle and Cook. And that project will be tied to building permit activity. And right now, tentatively, the threshold would be 2,000 residential units being constructed before that project is warranted. So it's highly unlikely that park will be needed over the next 10 to 12 years. Okay? And this slide shows the overall.
Go ahead, you got a question?
Matt, the park gap analysis that Blake did, How much of the two parks, the proposed two parks cover, like how much left of the red is there gonna be? Is there a map with the,
Well, if you open up the web app, we actually have a proposed park section which has its own
okay,
buffer layers in yellow, which will show what these prospected parks, what they would cover, and what gap areas they
Okay.
would cover. So that's.
so I don't have to open it right now, just tell me how much.
Yeah, there's a tab for that. You can check it out later.
Okay, well,
Will
it's-
will it
Approximately
address the gap
percentage.
and
problems?
we Blake and I had a conversation about this before the meeting, and it's a little misleading because we're treating Garden Canyon Linear Park as a park with service rings
Right.
when it's not improved to the level of a Tompkins Park. And so there needs to be some consideration that there's no true recreation facility south of, public recreation facility south of BST. And Roadrunner Park will certainly meet that need, which is why it was contemplated 30 years ago as a future park site.
Yeah, I want to make a comment too. If you look at the neighborhoods that are in red, in fact, I live in one of those neighborhoods that are red. Those are larger houses, larger lots. It's not like we have a series where we have multi-story row houses shoulder to shoulder to shoulder, which obviously those areas are greater needs of parks than us who live out in the boonies with the neighbors that are more than a stone throw away from our house. And we're not, we don't look out our window and see the neighbor in their kitchen type of situation. So, and as the other thing that was mentioned earlier is that most people don't walk to parks. They'll get on their bike or they'll get in their car. And certainly the ones in the red area there can afford to ride their bike or get in the car and take the kids to the park. It may not be as convenient, but the need is, I would say, is less great than those folks that are living shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, it goes back to the quality of life, having a park within walking distance. improves.
I get it. But
Whether
to me, it's
they-
priorities.
Right.
And I'd rather take care of the most needy folks first. And us less needy folks can manage for a while on our own, as we have so far. Just a comment, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so this chart shows the overall expenditures by type and phasing. More than 2/3 of the proposed expenditures relate to proposed upgrades to existing parks. Just under 1/5 to maintenance and replacement needs, and the balance to new park development. We've charted out an aggressive timetable for carrying out the plan with more than half the expenditures taking place over the next 4 years. And of course, in the sage words of the city manager, a plan without funding is nothing more than good ideas on paper. So we understand that the council holds the purse strings and that the timing of the plan will be determined through the budgeting process. But I think our stance is to overshoot and fall short rather than set the bar too low. And I know Laura, she brings a lot of energy and passion and smarts to the position. And if you provide the resources, I have no doubt that she could get the whole plan done in the next 4 years.
We know she can spend money, you don't have to tell us.
Yeah.
And so she's going to kind of walk you through the strategic objectives that guided the development of the capital improvements program, and then the potential sources of revenue that could be used to help carry it out. And so with that, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm super excited to talk to you about this part. I'm excited for a lot of reasons, just because I'm excited in general most of the time. But for this particular plan to actually be at a place to where we're having these conversations, I just want to thank you for the goal in the strategic leadership plan to get this put together. It kind of forced us to take that time to sit down and take a very comprehensive look at what we have going on, not just above the surface, but below the surface as well, and really challenge ourselves on what that's been costing us. Are we managing efficiently? Are we using staff appropriately? And how we can help ourselves also as we go through this. And what we found is that we have really been kind of managing our maintenance of some of the infrastructure with like putting out a fire. It was very reactive, and we're trying to transition ourselves into being more thoughtful and proactive in our approach. So without this laundry list of inventoried items, seeing it in a list like that, this is, I think, the first time it's ever happened. And so it's good to take a look at things, whether they're good or bad. It's just information, and what we do with that information is up to you and how fast you want to go to accomplish these goals. I'm here for the ride. We're excited to deliver this plan in full to you as fast as you want us to. We can be as aggressive as you like or take it nice and slow. So, but one thing I wanted to first do is to thank my team that I've worked with Matt, especially Blake, Laura Kilberg, all the other departments that helped get us information. This was a long process. And so I just wanted to make sure to give you guys thanks, and to also thank the amazing Parks and Recreation Commission. They have been truly wonderful and very supportive through this entire process. So the first thing that I want to address when talking about going from a reactive to a pro-maintenance approach is how much money is it costing us not to address our deferred maintenance issues. And we did an actual study using the last 2.5 years worth of repairs and averaged those costs out at a very minimal cost of $25 an hour, which is probably a little more depending on what kind of tech or maintenance personnel that we're utilizing to address this. So we're spending about $32,000 a year addressing irrigation point repairs. And some of our irrigation is so old, it was put in the ground in 1975. And so there is no smart irrigation parts to those to those plans. What's sad is it is old, and I'm older than that. So So, you know, it is costing us money every year by not addressing these and not really knowing what we have down there. So the only way that we're notified now is if we have a full sprinkler head blowout to where we can see actual water shooting in the air, or someone tells us that water is pooling somewhere, which then will cause, I didn't even factor in if it was overtime or happened on the weekend or at night. That's a 2-hour call out at time and a half. So this is a very conservative number to do that, and it's my desire to move us into a place to where we're addressing these issues, and as we're creating new infrastructure, that we're doing so in a way that will help us work smarter and leverage those the technology that's available in order for us to reduce those overhead costs, those direct costs associated with that. So there is also a benefit instead of a cost when we do address our deferred maintenance. And right now, we've already seen some success in that with the tournaments and stuff that have come into play, but we've also challenged the way that we've addressed how we purchase new equipment, and we're looking to right-size equipment, right-size our fleet. And last year we took a look at what we really needed. Instead of, you know, it was time to turn a car in, well, do we need another car, or do we need a gator or a couple of gators? And so we have been trading in some of our fleet and purchasing things that make more sense to get more workers on the job. And we also looked at how we were conducting our maintenance, and we actually found a piece of equipment called the Field Turf Renovator, which had a one-time cost of $14,000 that actually saves us $35,000 year over year now out of the budget, which the budget reflects those cuts when they happened 2 years ago. And we've continued those cuts today because we bought a right piece of equipment to do the right work, and it performs 5 functions at once. So tremendously cut down our maintenance time, and you can see the conditions of our sports facilities and parks They look beautiful. I'm very proud of our staff for that. But that's just, something of challenging our norms and the way that we've done things. And that's on management, and that's our responsibility to do that. I just want you to be assured that we are taking a look at those things. And by continuing to address these issues, we'll see more future savings as well. Oh, I thought it was PowerPoint. I was going to click. So part of our strategic objectives when it comes to this plan is tracking and reporting progress. I want you to know that I feel accountable to this project. I'm excited. I love a goal, and I love when we can check things off of a list. And so my plan is to always keep the mayor and council and the community abreast of where we are in the status of addressing this plan. We can add tracking information and executive reports. We could do, biannual updates, whatever the mayor and council would like. And so aggressively pursuing grant opportunities is very important. Victoria just stood up here and talked to you about, and I saw some of your faces when she said, there was $300,000 that were cut for the restrooms. $500,000 is a lot of money, and we're actively looking for ways to leverage that, and we're hoping to turn it into $1 million for you so that we can address even more bathrooms. So whenever you give us resources, we need to be able to take those and really find out how to expand what you've given us. Building and expanding community partnerships is vital to every single plan that we have in the city. In particular to Parks and Recreation and our open spaces. I feel like our department really is very close to the community. We have personal relationships with the community. We pride ourselves in the types of customer service that we give, and now we are intimately involved with a lot of our sporting organizations, which those partnerships are what brought those tournaments into town, and developing those partnerships and providing beautiful infrastructure is what made it possible for them to produce those results. And so it's well worth our time to get involved with these folks because they're already doing great things out there. They just need our support in doing more of it. I keep wanting to push the button. It's going to be a problem. Okay. So Sierra Vista is no longer a secret. And sports tourism, we are on the map as a sports tourism destination. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. We are known now. Our facilities, if you're not aware of just how amazing they are truly state of the art. The projects that the council and mayor supported in the Schneider Electric Initiative are truly we have the only U.S. soccer 7v7 markings in the state. And what happened during COVID by taking advantage of bringing some of those teams here to play games from all over the state, sometimes across the country. They came here to stay in our hotels and support our restaurants, our bars, our retail establishments. The feedback that I got was overwhelmingly good. And the coach who coaches at the Vail Soccer Club that held their tournament here because they couldn't get one up in the bigger cities, said that in 40 years of coaching, he's never had an experience as good as what he had here. And that comes down to our people in the community, our incredible staff, and the professionalism that they show. We are trying to match the quality of the fields and infrastructure that you allow us and providing us. And we hope that we're making you proud doing it. So the only thing that really we got bad feedback on was the bathrooms, but we're getting to that. We're addressing that now. So we're okay.
Pesky bathrooms.
So another big thing is the effect this had on our local communities and our families. Some of their children were able to sleep in their own beds and wake up and have breakfast at home while playing their first soccer game at home. It was an amazing thing. I tell people all the time that I believe our department provides the backdrop of the memories of raising our families here, of we really do set the stage for those things. It is important, and we treat it as such. And it's our pleasure to provide those services for people. Okay, so all these improvements and amenities also have begun to attract new events like Tour de Zona to choosing Sierra Vista as their place. They see Sierra Vista as an up-and-coming place, and we are physically making the change to our environment that Tony Boone stands up here and talks about. And we are doing that in very tangible ways, and I'll talk about that a little more too. But I did check on the Tour de Zona. They have over 40 registrations so far, and the furthest one is from Alaska. So we're excited. All right, so now for the fun stuff.
Before you move on, could I ask you to scroll back to the previous slide? I just want to make a suggestion. The next one. There we go. At no extra cost, I think you can add another strategic bullet on there. And again, this is just a suggestion. It comes from a prior city council strategic plan. And as you could probably put a bullet that says, promote a healthy community. And I just put that out there for thought, because that's one of the reasons we have the parks, physical and mental health both.
It's in.
Okay.
You got it.
That's a good one.
My favorite thing to talk about is money. So, what I want to address at first, this is a big price tag, and I know that. I've had some time to digest it, so I'm okay now. Some of you are just seeing it, whenever you got your packets, and I know it's hard to digest, but the thing to remember is we can just tackle one thing at a time, and we take bites out of things as we go. And we're gonna help try to solve this issue, or this opportunity to do something really incredible that looks like it's too much, and it doesn't have to be. We just have to find the proper resources and partnerships to help it, and the right vehicles, and that comes down to you, all of you. This is your decision. You're not adopting any of these ideas when we get to the point of adopting the plan. These are just things that we're throwing out there as options for your consideration.
Ready for me?
No, not yet. I'll throw it to you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is capital items. So these are any tangible item costing over $5,000 and having a usable life exceeding a year, or any major project that is over $5,000. So some examples of that are the entryway signage in there. Some of the repairing of the sports courts. Laura was talking to you about the tennis courts. You can put like a roll of nickels in some of the cracks out there. So those types of things are what I included here. And I identified about $4.6 million of capital in this plan, with the mix of financing opportunities that I broke out for you here. Everything is interchangeable.
Well, I just want to make a comment. Again, I don't like slowing you down if you just roll back a little bit. The multi-use path maintenance in parks. The question for the senior staff is, are you going to come up with a recommendation that we're going to do multi-use paths outside of parks, separate from multi-use paths in parks, or is it going to be the same? And that's a question for a future answer.
Okay.
Because we look at transportation, and it includes multi-use paths, but if it's an official multi-use path in a park, is it transportation money or is it parks money? So that's a.
Yeah, you're trying to accomplish two different goals.
Well, I know they're two different things, but it's the same multi-use path.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a multi-use path within a park area would necessarily qualify for.
Well, they won't qualify for transportation funds. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, so I think you're looking at it differently. there. Of course, then different standards can be applied to the construction as well, so.
Okay, so you're leading toward two separate items. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, so operations and maintenance is anything under that $5,000 threshold. So what I did is went through and I just grabbed all of those items, which equates to about $141,000 in the plan, and we will chip away at those through our regular operation and maintenance and actually track the dates of their completion, because this is a plan that's going to need to be updated periodically as well. Things are going to fall away, things are going to be added. Like one thing that is very obviously missing from here because it falls outside the 12-year window is the replacement of our artificial turf. That's not even addressed in here. So just more good news for everyone. So some of the things that we can do there are the things that we can add. The small solar lighting fixtures that we want to place around the walking paths through maybe the Upper Soldier Creek Park area, more around Timothy Lane. Small signage, we've been chipping away at those. We started last year. We have another portion of our O&M slated for next year. Mr. Mayor, you'll like to know that our big directional signs that you talked to me about several months ago are actually being installed today out there. So they should be ready to go for 4th of July. Good. And for our summer tournaments. Any small remodel repairs and playground features repairs, not playground replacements, you can actually replace those features until they become obsolete. So all of those are included in here. And then I love this slide. This is a concept drawing of what the little slide from the Upper Soldier Creek could look like into the Lower Soldier Creek area. And we've been talking before about community involvement, and it's so cute. Community involvement and grassroots efforts, and that is where our time is well spent because we have so many community organizations that are just dying to help us do some of this stuff, and we just haven't gotten the word out well. So this would be very intentionally going to places like the Kiwanis, and I'll talk about that a little more too. But just involving ourselves with the community, let them know what we're doing, and giving them an opportunity to be a part of that. Other things that we could do are, some of the splash pad projects, and enhancing the current Lynn Roberts splash pad, which is being repaired right now. But those make up approximately about $170,000. Doesn't mean that's all that's in the plan that we could ask the community for help with. These are just some immediately identified.
And I was going to mention, just because somewhere in here you're talking about hoping more people would visit Soldier Creek by what we're adding. And I have already noticed a huge difference in people attending that park and using. I think just because it's closer to the road now, it's drawing more people in. And then they're like, well, I'm this far. Then they go down into the park. Yeah. And there's so many people walking every night. I've never seen that many people out there before.
Because they do that,
So
the
it's
multi-use paths too that are right there with it.
Mm-hmm.
That go to Searing or whatever, so.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
wanted to
nice
share
park.
that with you because we were making comments with my husband and I when the kids go out there. We're like, there's so many more people here every night. It was never like that before. We would be alone some nights.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Councilmember Humphrey, because it just goes to the point, parks really do bring people together. And I think increasing the visibility of Soldier Creek Park really made a huge difference. Some people, I've heard they didn't even know that Soldier Creek Park was there.
Right.
And so making these enhancements and adding some little fun, quirky things that are unique gives our community personality, and people are going to want to explore that.
And I saw people leaving the hotel, the Best Western, coming over, doing their laps, running, exercising, and then walking. And I've never seen that before either. It's because they can see it now.
That makes me very happy. Thank Thank you.
Made me happy too.
So going back to our partnerships and grants, working with our community leaders and really digging in and finding our community champions, because they're out there. And I met one recently with Tony Boone. And so one of the things that we do as our part for supporting the economic development efforts with Tony and the rest of our economic development team is we started doing like world tours. So, not world tours, but just Sierra Vista tours about all the cool things that are going on. And so Tony invited me in. We had a meeting with the Kiwanis a couple of weeks ago, turned into a huge conversation about all the cool stuff, and we decided to invite them out. And we drove them through the plans. We talked about the West End redevelopment efforts. We talked about how parks play into that, how one feeds the other. And it was like light bulbs coming on with people because they understand the cyclic process. We can't have one successfully without the other. And this is our role. We are the foundation. And so you don't want to build a beautiful home on a bad foundation. So I think by going out and us taking the time as a team to really describe what's going on and show them, physically show them, we will start to see some momentum throughout the community, and the champions and us trying to find them, we'll find each other. We'll find each other. And there's some cool things happening because of that. So we can also, by partnering with these nonprofit organizations, there is a way to work together in order to pursue grants, either by them leading the grant with us supporting through MOUs as providing a match for some of those. Maybe if they can, if they come to us like trying to accomplish one of the goals, they lead it during in the middle of a fiscal year, they can deliver the project, dedicate it to the city, and then we check the box. So we can only do that by partnering with people. Those are things we cannot do on our own. And as far as some of the things on this plan, the Arbins field inversion, the plan for that is to create a year-round space for youth baseball, which we don't currently have an all-year space for that, except for the one field that's located at Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex, which needs work. And that would be like a regional tournament center. So it would have, that would be something we would share with our neighbors. And we're looking to partner with Sierra Vista Little League Baseball, softball, and our travel ball teams for them to lead the next Diamondbacks grant pursuit. So we'll be applying for that next year, if all goes well. And then the pump track trailhead enhancement, that is prime for land water conservation all day long. They have been really great to us, and that's actually the same funding source that we're asking for the $3 million project for half of that funding there.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I want to break in real quick because I want to not challenge, but I want to let council know, the rest of council know. I went, well, not that I went on it. When the Kiwanis came, I got to go in the morning, and I think it's nice having the staff and the council representative there. They're doing their thing, but I was asked different questions. So I'd like to see if y'all want, and I know me and Laura talked, if they let you know the dates, if you can find time available to go on with them. It was pretty fun. We went to Book Nook and had the best scones I've ever had in my life. Oh, my Lord. And then went on the story walk, which if you haven't been behind the library, that's pretty, it was really nice what they're doing back in the back of the library. No one would have thought. But I encourage you to go along when you can and just be a presence there. Still let them get all the glory, but just be a presence. It was very interesting walk and very interesting time. So that's it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The next thing that the mayor and council could consider is a possible phase 2 for the energy performance contract. The first one accomplished about $14 million worth of goals. There are some benefits to that. It provides, if you have very old infrastructure that produces a large energy savings, it's well worth looking into that, because what we are realizing with our first plan is by strategically taking care of the soccer fields, that enabled us also to not close any of our fields for maintenance in the last 3.5 years, which means we're making revenue 365 days a year now. So we've gone from about a 41% usage rate to over 80% now, which is phenomenal. And we're very excited to see that. What it did is it took all the punishing activities off of our multi-use areas and moved them into a place that is very hard to damage because it's created for that. And so by doing that, we now rest our fields in use and we don't have to close, and it's great. But an energy performance contract could be, we've done that once before. You use your energy savings that is guaranteed through the third party as a way to pay down your debt service on those infrastructure items. And there's been some legislative changes in there as well this year for utilizing energy performance contracting within the mix that you use to evaluate the value, the ceiling value of your overall project. You can now equate future revenues and any cost avoidance into that formula. So that is something also new, and that would be available for your consideration. Some of the projects for that would include our irrigation replacements, the artificial turf at the football field, the field court lighting at Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex, this baseball and softball field refurbishment. You could also, that equates to about $9 million of the overall plan, and that is just for the park maintenance portion of it. That could also be rolled into other city initiatives that affect other city departments at the same time and consolidated for a bigger package. And this is where I turn it over to Chuck.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of council, as we talked about earlier, you don't really have a plan, or you can't implement a plan unless there's funding associated with it. So, and certainly we don't have any specific, proposals at this point in time, because finding the funding to do this is going to take a process to go through, and probably a public process as well. So, earlier in the presentation, you saw a price tag of $42 million to implement the entire plan. Council gave us a very aggressive goal of trying to accomplish this in 10 years. Certainly, maybe not all items will be accomplished, but we'll round it and say over 10 years, you're talking about $4 million a year to go towards this to try and get it accomplished. The good news this year, primarily because we are receiving some federal funding to help us with the budget, and probably next year too, is that probably $4 to $5 million is being put in this year's budget that goes towards this plan. So already you're taking off within this year's budget a significant portion of the plan. The bad news is, will we be able to peel $4 or $5 million out of the budget going forward over that time? Probably not, and the reason for that is threefold. I've talked in the strategic planning process, you really have three large cost issues to address over the next 10 years. We already talked tonight about public safety retirement system and paying down the unfunded liability for that. Street maintenance, of course, is another one, and certainly there's nothing inexpensive about getting our streets up to par, is also part of your strategic plan. And then what I call quality of life and economic development, which this is a large portion of, because certainly this will not only address a lot of the quality of life issues for the community that we haven't addressed, but we are seeing an uptick in tournaments and those kind of things, which helps the community economically as well, and improves the look of the community as an attractive place for other people to relocate to. So this is that part of that. So how do we get to $40 million over 10 years? And there's a number of ways to do that. Obviously, we're seeing that being employed this year with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant from the state. You're seeing partnerships with the school district that are helping us, try to acquire some of the land we need, like for Roadrunner Park. And then, of course, we're using, current funds then to address some of the others this year. So how do we get to where we need to be? Go ahead and go to the next slide. I think it's that's not that one. So obviously, revenues will be needed. We certainly want to continue to pursue grants, and we're very good at that. And we will continue to, now that we have the roadmap laid out in terms of this plan, assuming the council approves it, we can start identifying targets for grant opportunities that we've already started doing. And I believe this will help us identify those potential grant opportunities. I think we also have opportunities to fill in the gaps in our parks plan by working with the school district on potential land that they have that can be converted to parks, potential facilities that they may have that we could co-use with them, those kind of things. So those are certainly discussions we would like to have. All of that will help defray some of the costs of doing this if we're successful in doing that. But in terms of revenues and bringing financing to this, Laura already mentioned the Schneider project that's already been successful. We do see the opportunity to potentially put in a phase 2 Schneider project, and staff is already working with Schneider on identifying projects within this plan that may be beneficial in terms of reaching our goals. That has the benefit of lowering our operations and maintenance costs, as well as bringing in some outside revenue sources, probably through conventional financing, like we have before for the first Schneider project. So that is one thing that we're looking at, which can take a big chunk, I think, out of this. Second would be the potential use of a general obligation bond. That's a property tax bond that requires a vote of the public to do that. As you know, we have a very, very low property tax here in Sierra Vista, but the key is to find a project that can gain support across the community. The improvements at Veterans Memorial Park we estimate to be around $19 million currently. We'll be taking a chunk out of that with this year's funding, but perhaps the entire community which benefits from Veterans Memorial Park may be interested in supporting a general obligation bond to pay the remaining portions that we're not able to find grant funds for. So that is a potential revenue source. And then your other revenue sources, really involve maybe using the Municipal Property Corporation or other conventional financing through general fund sales tax sources. And the two most readily identified are hospitality taxes and restaurant and bar taxes, which you currently levy at a higher rate than you do your general sales tax. Hospitality obviously is taxing people that are coming in from out of town, taking advantage of our amenities and those kind of things, which brings in outside money to help pay for some of these improvements. And then restaurant and bar is more a luxury tax type item, which also can take advantage of outside people coming in and helping to pay for some of these things. So So, just an example down at the bottom there, you see hospitality tax per 1% generates about 162,000 per year at current sales, and then restaurant and bar also 1% generates about 892,000. So, those two things together could leverage, $10, $12 million of improvements that can help defray the cost of some of these amenities that we're showing you here in $40 million of improvements. So you see, what a larger tax would generate, and certainly those can pay for any municipal property corporation bonds or conventional funding within a relatively short amount of time. So those are just some examples of the funds that we have available to us within our revenue stream that can help support some of these. Of course, as we get grants or partnership opportunities to defray those, obviously we don't need as much or need to finance as long to offset that. So those are just some things we'd be looking at. Of course, we would be working together with you and the council to develop whatever funding strategies you think may be appropriate to pursue in the future, again, with the budget challenges that we already face. But I would imagine the final solution is going to be a mixture of all those various things that I mentioned to you here today. But that's just some of the ways that we can get at funding this plan. So,
Chuck, I think it's important that you talked about funding, and we're going to have to address that specifically on on an issue-by-issue type basis. Obviously, I think we all realize that additional funding is going to be needed to get this done in 10 years. But again, I don't see that approval of the general plan is contingent upon deciding how we're going to finance it. In my mind, the financing is a separate discussion once we have the objective established by the approval of the plan, and then we're going to have to figure out how we finance it, when we finance it, et cetera.
and I believe that's part of your future budgets and future budget discussions that
Okay.
you're going to
So
have.
we're not when we vote on what I'm trying to guess, I guess I'm.
Yeah, you're not voting on the
Being as
financing.
simply stated as possible, by voting for the plan doesn't mean we're gonna vote to raise taxes. If we, in the future, if we want to raise taxes, we're gonna have to figure out a way to do that and why, and justify that. But we're not, by approving this, we're not automatically saying we're gonna raise taxes. So,
Yeah, what we're trying not, obviously, we'll have the roadmap and we'll have the targets for grants and those kind of things that are
Exactly.
gonna help knock these, some of these things out. And that's gonna be a very important component of this. What we don't wanna see is, and we have great examples of this throughout the community. Tompkins Park took 30 years before we were able to finally develop it as a park. We just didn't have any funding sources available to do that. Roadrunner Park is a current example of a piece of land that's been sitting out there since 1993. People have been wanted a park there. It hasn't been part of a plan. We haven't found the financing to do that. Even now, we're just working with the school district to acquire the rest of it so we can build a park. So some of these areas just become orphans because we haven't had a plan like
and,
this.
well, the thing is, we got a plan that we can approve, but we gotta approve the funding separately, is what I'm saying, and the way we fund it. So that's a future discussion.
Okay, so I just wanted to go back a couple of slides that I skipped over. One thing that we can also do as a part of implementation is identify things that maybe could go together to accomplish multiple goals at once, like killing several birds with one stone, if you will. And one place that we've identified a potential for doing that is within our Veterans Memorial Park master plan with the sports complex, utilizing the gymnasium. So when Laura was talking about that, she was talking to you about creating a complex feel. And really, when I look at this overhead, I see a deconstructed YMCA, like all over it. It has everything you need within walking distance. We have children's programming. One potential is, instead of considering constructing a new community center, there are a few options for that, but utilizing this space within the gymnasium expansion might possibly make sense as well. Like investing a little more to the office spaces and allowing a consolidation of our staffing could move us into a 6-day operation without hiring an additional body. If we took every one of my staff out of the Osprey Room Community Center and then even looked across the street to the Ethel Berger Center and consolidated them here, it would leave space for, if you were going to demolish the OICC, for maybe the visitor center to utilize the Ethel Berger space and expand the museum operations into that space while we entertain and look for a West End availability. That is one potential. But consolidating my staff into one general area would definitely give us an opportunity to open up the gym in, and collect revenues there without having someone external go sit there. We're already there. And we could go into evenings and weekends during that time, which, you know, might be an option to consider. So might be a little more than just doubling the size, but also maybe half of what a newly constructed community center could be. Moving our children's programming maybe into the sports division and consolidating sports in gives us a campus to run full day and week-long programs in a centralized location, also reducing the overhead needed to care for the children in our programs, and also being able to get them to maybe a sports camp in the afternoon at the same time, or over to their swim lessons without the need for transporting all over town. So that is just one option that I wanted to share with you as well. And I think that's it.
I want to share with council on this subject a discussion I had with the city manager. And basically, our Parks Department, our Library and Leisure Services Department has a number of functions. And what we really need to identify is, when we're talking about moving functions to new buildings, we need to identify what the function is and what the need of that function, what the space is needed for that function to operate effectively. And until that is done, whether we renovate the Oscar Ruin Center, whether we bulldoze it, whether we change functions of the Ethel Berger Center, that needs to be at another point in the discussion, in my mind. But we need to know what the functions are, what the requirements are, space requirements, everything else, time requirements of the people. And those have to be identified in their current locations and then projected into the future location if in fact we move those. So we're talking, in my mind, we're talking down the road, being able to do that so we've become efficient, and maybe we don't have to build a new Oscar Ruin Community Center or we do other functions. But again, we need to know exactly what's being done, what it takes to get that done, how much space is available, all that other information. And the worst thing that can happen is we even double the size of the gym and find out that's not adequate, and then we're in a pinch. So other things to think about. Yes, sir.
Okay, I see we're coming up on 5 o'clock. That was our pitch. And we, at this point, are just seeking the feedback and direction that was provided today. We are going to be going line by line through the meeting minutes to make sure that we capture all your comments. And it would be our recommendation to go ahead and post this plan to the city's website for public review. And then perhaps later this summer, if you feel we're ready, to present the plan along with the comments for approval consideration. That would be by resolution.
And I'm going to make a suggestion here. I appreciate the fact that we're going to put this out on the net. I think we're ready for that. If there's any objections for public comment, put it on the net for public comment. You know, put it out there 30 days, whatever, 2 weeks, whatever you think the requirement is. This, what is it, half-inch stack of paper? I'm sure since we got it yesterday, most of us haven't gone through it in detail. I, for one, would like to have some time to go through it in detail. From what I've seen, just from scanning through it, it looks like it's pretty well thought out and a pretty good action plan. There may be some things I need to discuss with folks, but I think you need feedback from the council as well. If we, and give us time for individual feedback back down to 30 days. And then Mr. Manager, Assistant City Manager, after the 30-day public comment, we'll have to discuss whether we want to come back and have it on a discussion item for a work session, or whether we're ready to go to approval right away. So that's the way I look at it. So we're talking at least another month, maybe 6 weeks.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I was probably thinking more like along the lines of 2 to 3 months to.
Okay, well,
before you get around
obviously, we haven't got the financing thing figured out yet. There may be other things when we go through the plan where we'll say, well, did we consider this? Did we consider that? It may take longer than that. So, at a minimum, 30 days out to public, review the public comments, maybe 2 months, 3 months.
We'll see how the response is. So.
And this is, as far as the financing goes, obviously, at some point in time, we're going to have another discussion about taxes. You said we're probably pretty well covered for the next 2 years, but we obviously don't want to wait until year 3 to talk about financing this plan if we have to go to different methods other than what we're currently using.
Yeah.
So that's another point of discussion after this is adopted.
The legislature may be throwing us a curveball.
Well, that's right. We never know what the legislature is going to do if we get cut. Based on the shared income tax, we're going to be in a worse position. So, short term.
Well, we've been at this for over a year.
I know you guys have been working
a few
on it
more
hard,
months
and I
to
appreciate that.
establish a comfort level with you and the community is absolutely no problem. So we'll take as long as it needs.
Does anybody on the council have a problem with that? Will you proceed on this? Okay. All right.
Okay.
I just have a comment.
Comments?
I just have a comment. Some of you may know I was in the hotel business for over 30 years, and I fought the battle against hospitality taxes, both at the local level in Des Plaines, Illinois, and also in Springfield, Illinois. And I was absolutely shocked when I saw this suggestion of potential revenue sources. You're asking us if we think about this, restaurant and bar. I go to restaurants and bars, I think we all do. That's a tax increase. I don't buy that. And I don't buy using a hospitality tax with the excuse that, oh, people from out of town pay that tax. No, we've had an industry that's been drastically affected by COVID for over a year. Restaurants and bars have closed in the city because of COVID. I wouldn't even consider voting for this as a potential revenue source. And I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, and again, we'll have ample opportunity in the future to discuss this, and that's why the point I wanted to make, because we could really got into a discussion today about taxes and financing and all kinds of things. But again, I think the time to do that is once we've approved the plan and looking to move forward. Okay.
I have a comment real quick,
Yes, ma'am.
too. I loved going through this and the presentation today, how everything was broken down. Lots of different things were broken down differently, and the different parks were broken down and the system and everything that was used. I thought that was really great, and I really loved being able to kind of go over it and then your presentations today. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, anybody else? Well, again, I'll thank everybody for their hard work on this.
Yeah.
Particularly our commissioners and and the staff principals, as well as those that are working the stubby pencils. We appreciate that. The next thing we have is a report on trips, meetings, future meetings. I don't have anything to report on the rural transportation meeting that we had yesterday via Zoom, because they were pretty much talking about what the legislature hasn't done, could do, et cetera. It was all conjecture. So that wasn't, there wasn't, not too much to report on that. Kind of a tough meeting to sit through. Does anybody else have anything on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings?
No, sir.
Okay. Future discussion items and council requests, Madam Assistant City Manager. What have we got on the, coming up?
Just budget coming up so far now.
Okay. And I want to remind everybody that we do have a executive session on Thursday to talk about potential new council members. The way this has worked in the past is our good clerk has received the applications, and I'm gonna ask her to, as soon as it closes, to get information out to each one of us on the application, so that when we do meet in executive session, we can discuss each person. I will tell you, having been involved in this in the past, as you go through the number of applications and we try to rank them from 1 to whatever the last number is, there is usually a break, the top 3, top 4, top 5, top 6. And we need to, at that meeting, we'll try to come to a consensus where that cutoff point is. And then later, we will invite those folks that made the cutoff in for an interview, so we can sit down and talk to them, and everybody in executive session is present to be able to conduct basically a job interview with these folks. And then after that, we will deliberate, come to a consensus, and then, of course, we have to actually go to a council meeting where we vote in public on the person that we appoint. Okay, so that's kind of how I see it happening. So I would encourage you, as soon as you see that hot little email from Jill, you take the time to go through, was it 16, Jill? Well, there's more than enough to review. So it's going to be a little bit of a work on Thursday before the executive session.
When do they have till?
Tomorrow at 5:30.
Tomorrow at 5.
Okay.
So that number could go up.
Could go up exponentially.
Could go down.
Okay.
I guess you could withdraw.
So, any other comments or questions or council requests? Anything else to discuss before Thursday that's on the agenda? Seeing nothing, thank you, everybody, for your attendance. Meeting's adjourned.